Looking forward to those Mayflowers? I'm Charlie Sykes. Sunday Insight starts right now. Good morning and welcome to Sunday Insight. In the week that was, well, that happened. The Bucks playoff hopes end in a blowout and no deal yet for a new arena. Milwaukee marks the one-year anniversary of the shooting of Dontre Hamilton as riots erupt in Baltimore over a death in police custody. Murders in the city of Milwaukee are up 182% over last year. The national economy seems to stall. A superquake in Nepal leaves thousands dead. And the Packers choose a defensive back in the NFL draft. State Supreme Court justices waste no time in ousting Chief Justice Shirley Abramson and replacing her with Justice Pat Roggensack. But we start with those riots in Baltimore and worries about a long, hot summer. Peaceful protests turned violent and a city erupted. The flashpoint, this man, Freddie Gray, who died of a broken spine in police custody. Protests turned violent last Saturday night and then exploded on Monday, leading to the deployment of the National Guard. It was a scene of dramatic confrontations, including this mom who saw her son throwing rocks at police and decided on some intervention of her own. But the rising tensions raise questions in cities across the country, including in Milwaukee. Are we at a tipping point, and what will that mean for this summer? Joining me on our panel this morning, defense attorney Dan Adams, former State Representative Michelle Litjens, political strategist Lynne DeBruin, and the managing editor of RightWisconsin.com, Collin Roth. Let's talk about the mom first. Hero mom, over the line. What do you think? Lynne DeBruin.
I liked what she did.
Yeah.
She did it for two reasons. She did an interview a day or so later, and she did it first because she was outraged over his actions, and second because she was concerned that by him getting involved, he could end up being targeted by the police and harmed in police custody as well. So for both reasons, I have no problem what she did. She didn't cause any major physical harm, and she clearly put her son in his place.
Okay, also as a mom, there was some of that hand-wringing going on that she was perpetuating the violence and that you should never actually hit your child. And we heard that rhetoric about this. So your reaction when you saw that, Mom?
I completely support her. I wish we had more parents out there willing to do that. And in fact, if you notice, when she first slapped him a bit, he slapped her back. And she's like, I'm not going to stand for that. And she went after him and she stopped him. I think it was even better that when you saw from the interviews that the son then said, you know what, my mom did the right thing. She didn't want to see me getting into trouble.
I thought it was interesting that he was more afraid of Mom than of the cops. He was prepared to throw rocks at armed cops. But when he saw Mom, that's when he made a beeline to try to get out of there. Okay, Collin Roth, on Friday, of course, the state's attorney issued murder charges, criminal charges against 6 of the officers. Will that calm things down or further inflame this anti-police mood that we're seeing in urban areas?
Well, these cops will get their day in court, and I don't know if these charges will stick. They're very, very serious charges, and I'm glad that we have a process. What's unfortunate is that we have a lot of distrust in these communities, that the cops don't trust the community doesn't trust the cops and doesn't trust the system. There's a lot of things that are very unfortunate about that. But I am just distraught by the fact that these narratives keep popping up in different cities, and that we don't wait for the facts to play out. We don't wait to find out what actually happened and judge them on their merits.
Okay, now Dan Adams, my reaction was watching what happened in Baltimore, and you see how quickly something can spiral out of control, and we've had one incident after another. It is only May. It is not summertime yet. And I wonder if, in fact, the police are under this kind of siege, there is this kind of pressure, there is the rhetoric out there. Are we looking at a long, hot summer?
In Milwaukee?
Well, sure.
Boy, I sure hope not.
Well,
and I hope there's not a spark similar to this one or a Dontre Hamilton type situation that gets out of control. I don't think we will have that type of situation. We could have some type of flash mob situation like what happened at State Fair Park several years ago, but I don't think there's going to be any concerted riot type situation in Milwaukee. And the reason is because I think that Curtis Sales and Nate Hamilton, who have led the Coalition for Justice here in Milwaukee, have done a pretty good job about being aggressive with supporters of taking some action against police brutality in Milwaukee, and have given an outlet that people aren't going to feel the need to get.
One of the questions that came up in Baltimore was this question of how much space do you give them? Now, the mayor, of course, I think probably misspoke when she said we gave them space to destroy, although it appears that's in fact what she actually did. You actually have police who are saying that they were told to stand down. So there's that question of philosophy that when you have demonstrations, when you have this kind of acting out, should the police be more aggressive? Should they back off? What is the next city going to do?
You know what they really need to do, all cities need to do, do today is start saying this is not acceptable behavior. They need to make investments in their communities today in their education and employing these young black men that have such a high unemployment rate across the country so that this doesn't ever happen in the future. They need to follow Rudy Giuliani's lead in New York City when he cleaned that up, and obviously we don't have enough mayors doing that across the country.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think Tom Barrett would ever give that type of instructions to the police. Obviously, he'd want them to follow police procedure.
They had a back-off policy here in Milwaukee there for a while.
Well, but not on severe violent protests. On keeping a distance from protesters, yes, but that mayor went way too far. I think the other thing we have to take into consideration is, yes, the Dontre Hamilton protests have gone really well. On the other hand, we have the highest black incarceration rate as a city in the nation, and when you have that high of a rate, the chances of something happening and mistake happening or deliberate happening rises the possibility.
Here's the other end of that stick, which is that we are now at 48 murders. The murder rate is up. Yeah, we're at 50 murders.
Right.
I'm sorry,
as of Friday.
As of 50 murders in this city, up from about 17 a year ago. You talk about the black incarceration rate. What about the black murder rate? The black on black murder rate. And I know this is getting to be a broken record, but we're not focusing on that. And I worry that the focus on the police issue, which is legitimate. I mean, hold those guys accountable, absolutely. That we're going to be losing track of our ability to get a handle on what's really becoming a scary situation here in Milwaukee. Okay, what has your glass half full? What has your glass half empty? Let's go around the table. Dan Adams, you're first.
Charlie, my glass is half empty because a couple weeks ago, the Milwaukee School Board rejected a phenomenal charter school proposal, largely because the school will be hiring Teach for America alumni, not unionized MPS staff. My glass is half full because this MPS board temper tantrum will remind the state legislature that an independent recovery district to rescue Milwaukee students from failing schools is a crucial legislative priority.
Michelle Litjens.
My glass is half full because a Harvard poll says young people are more skeptical of the arguments that human activities are causing catastrophic global warming. It is half empty because we will still see a full court press from Hollywood and academia to put an end to their independent thinking.
Lynne DeBruin.
Well, my glass is half full because the number of major earthquakes has fallen since the 1990s. But my glass is half empty because Saturday's earthquake in Nepal shows how devastating a quake can be. More than 6,000 are dead, and injury and disease will push the death toll much higher.
Collin Roth.
My glass is half full because we have a new Chief Justice of the Wisconsin Supreme Court, Pat Rogensack. It's half empty because Shirley Abramson still thinks she's Chief Justice and will no doubt continue to cause division and dissension.
Well, my glass is half empty because April was a disappointing month for both the Brewers and the Bucks, and the weather was lousy. It's half full because, hey, it's May. Next on Sunday Inside, another showdown with unions in Wisconsin. Another showdown over unions. For 84 years, Wisconsin has had a so-called prevailing wage law that requires governments to pay prevailing union-level wages on most public projects, schools, roads, public works. That means that taxpayers can pay as much as 45% more than the private sector for the same jobs. A provision that also makes those projects cost maybe as much as 20 to 25% more than they otherwise would have. The Nonpartisan Taxpayers Alliance says that repealing the Depression-era law could save taxpayers $200 to $300 million a year, but the law is strongly supported by unions, big contractors, and the road builders lobby, who contribute heavily to Republicans. Last week, Assembly Speaker Robin Vos said that he lacked the votes to repeal prevailing wage, but Senator Steve Nass announced that he will hold a hearing and a vote this coming week. Is this going to happen or not? How do you see this playing out, Michelle Litjens?
You know, so I am a strong opponent of prevailing wage. I think that it's wrong. But you have to start looking at this politically. We have 12 state representatives that were elected by less than 1,000 votes just this last cycle. 7 of those representatives won in a district that Romney lost. So, and I know that they have a supermajority right now. They're at 63. But you have a number of members outstate, besides those 35 conservatives that signed on to the bill, but a number of members outstate that do not strongly support repealing prevailing wage. So you wonder, do you want to push this vote, make this happen, or do you want to work on a bill that's actually going to fix and save the taxpayers' money?
I want to push it and get people on the record on this, because I'm having a hard time getting my head around why a fiscally conservative Republican who voted for Act 10, would vote for right to work, would vote against or not support something that would save the taxpayers this much money. Can you explain that to me, Collin Roth?
I can't explain it at all, Charlie. I think this... The best thing about repeal of prevailing wage is that it's such an obvious win for taxpayers. I mean, we see the tremendous amount of savings that it could come from it. And the problem I'm having, and I want to see Republicans on the record, is I don't see them defend it on the merits. No one will explain why this is a good public policy.
Lynne DeBruin, yeah.
First of all, let's clear up a misnomer or a myth that's out there that if you're a conservative Republican, you can't possibly support prevailing wage. More than 50 Republican congressmen have voted twice in the last 4 years to stop laws that would stop the federal prevailing wage.
Yeah.
Rick Santorum doesn't support prevailing, or does support prevailing wage. So does Paul Ryan, repeatedly. It was Republicans who pushed and it got the federal laws adopted.
There are a lot
so
of
the bottom line is there are Republicans who support it.
Of course there are.
And two-thirds of our states have prevailing wage.
And there are Republicans who support massive corporate welfare as well.
That's right.
That's why I said conservative, fiscal conservatives.
But the storyline that I'm hearing in Wisconsin somehow is if you're a conservative or a fiscal conservative,
okay, well, let's talk about the merits.
Okay, but let's talk about
why should we artificially inflate the cost of a project?
The prevailing wage, first of all, even by your own statistics, if you actually agree with them, and there's statistics that fight that, but even if you agree, it ups it potentially up by 20%. Right. You're ignoring the other statistics that show that when you hire the best workers possible, which is what prevailing wage ends up getting, skilled workers go to states with prevailing wage, that brings that 20% down. There's nothing wrong with the middle class. No, there's nothing wrong with the middle class.
On Michelle's point, you can imagine the Assembly caucus for the Republicans sitting around going, what are we going to tell the bubbas? These are the guys with the big trucks up in the rural districts who have voted consistently with Republicans, and this may be the first time that this hits their actual pocketbook. So there's a big political bloodletting to happen.
Well, except that there's also the argument that every single school district, every single municipality, every single city will get more bang for their buck. And for example, you will get a substantially more for the amount of money you put into the Bucks Arena if and when that ever happens, if you don't have to pay these inflated costs. I mean, so you have 3 workers who make $33 an hour as opposed to 2 workers who make $50 an hour. The case, if the point behind Act 10 was to save money for the taxpayers and provide flexibility to local government, this ought to be a no-brainer.
Charlie, we actually have that opportunity to do that and continue to have a majority after the 2016 election by making substantial changes to prevailing wage. Also, 83% of the roads that are built in our state are going to continue to have prevailing wage because they have federal funds.
You can modify it.
I think that Republicans need to also ask, what is the point of having a majority if you won't do anything with it?
Right to work.
You may not want to hear it, but we'll tell you anyway. Let's hand out some unsolicited advice. Dan Adams,
I love it when the Republicans fight. To Mayor Tom Barrett. Okay, high five on further development of downtown, but the physical environment isn't the solution to attracting millennials to Milwaukee. My advice, like all before us, millennials will locate where there are jobs. Focus on attracting businesses.
Michelle Litjens.
Michael Moore said we should disarm the police and release all nonviolent black prisoners. My advice is for no one to ever take advice from Michael Moore.
Lynne DeBruin.
My unsolicited advice is for Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake, who told the Baltimore police during the riots to give those who wish to destroy space to do so. Mayor, don't handcuff the police when your city is burning. Let them do their jobs.
Collin Roth.
My advice is for folks to drop the inane debate over the word thug and focus on real issues of police abuse, poverty, crime, failing schools, and lack of opportunities in our cities.
Well, after what happened last week in Baltimore, I think it's time to dial down all the anti-police rhetoric. By all means, hold the bad cops accountable, but unless we have some restraint, it's going to be a long, hot, and potentially bloody summer. Next on Sunday Inside, Shirley Abramson is out. We have a new Chief Justice of the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. Wasting no time, the justices on the Wisconsin State Supreme Court ousted longtime Chief Justice Shirley Abramson, voting to replace her with Justice Pat Roggensack. The justices acted within hours of the official certification of the constitutional amendment that voters passed on April 7th to change the way the chief was selected. Under the old provision, which was based solely on seniority, Abramson had been Chief Justice since 1996. The new Constitution lets justices choose. Despite that, Abramson is still fighting and has sued in federal court to keep her job. So what happens now, Collin Roth?
Well, I think we have a new Chief Justice in Pat Rogensack, and this is what democracy looks like. The voters gave the justices the right to do this, and they acted on that right lawfully.
But do we have two justices? Is Shirley Abramson going to say, I'm still the Chief Justice, so therefore it's like having two popes?
Oh, she could very well say that, and we can all imagine her doing that. But this will be decided one way or another.
Okay, were you surprised they acted as quickly as they were? Because I was a little bit surprised.
I wasn't really.
No, okay.
I mean, you know, the
lawyers,
votes
right?
were certified and they made their decision. And it'll be interesting, like Collin said, will she actually agree to have her office moved? Will she agree to the pay cut? I mean, we're in a point where kind of the de facto who has the staff and who has the stamp is going to be the Supreme Court. I hope they don't have Capitol Police and they're ripping Shirley out.
Taking her stamp.
I actually have that picture where they're going to be changing the locks on the doors. Were you surprised they acted that quickly? Because the federal judge had sort of suggested, hey, you know, I won't block you from doing it, but I hope you guys go slow, and they forget that, we're out of here.
I was a little surprised. I really thought they were going to listen to Prosser by waiting until the end of this term. But boy, it kind of shows the angst on the court that they wanted to take this action as quickly. I think they really made a wise decision by choosing Pat Rogensack, though she has a 9-year term. But that's another question, right? We don't know how long this term is going to last. They have a lot to sort out.
Well, and I think that this will push the federal judge, Peterson, to make his decision quickly. He said he was going to try and do it quickly. And I think if there's two justices fighting over who's actually gets the corner office, then he'll do it even sooner.
Well, I also think, I mean, the justices realize, though, that you create a reality on the ground, and I think every lawyer knows that, you know, if you establish that, it becomes much harder for that federal judge to unwind it, particularly if she begins to act as Chief Justice. What is it you don't get? Let's go around the table. Dan Adams, you're first.
Charlie, I don't get how Rand Paul has been talking for years about expanding the GOP's reach into the African-American community, but when the opportunity to discuss race relations presented this week, he took a pass and let Hillary fill the conversational void.
Michelle Litjens.
Charlie, I don't get why the only black lives that matter are blacks killed by police, and the blacks who are killed by other blacks every day, their lives don't matter at all.
Lynne DeBruin.
What I don't get is why Wisconsin Republican legislators have a new bill that won't allow food stamp recipients to buy sharp cheddar cheese or shellfish. For a political party that hates government intrusion into our lives, these Republicans certainly have no problem dictating what the poor should eat.
Collin Roth.
What I don't get is why Democratic State Representative Melissa Sargent wants to implement a $15 per hour minimum wage here in Wisconsin, when this wage is already killing jobs and closing businesses in Seattle.
Well, what I don't get is how any fiscally conservative, pro-market conservative would have the slightest hesitation in voting to eliminate the antiquated, wasteful, expensive, anti-competitive, anti-taxpayer prevailing wage law. Next on Sunday Inside, our panel picks the winners and losers of the week. First, here's your morning news update. It's time for our panel to pick the winners and losers of the week. Dan Adams, you're first.
My losers for the week, GOP Assembly members attempting to dictate what food products are consumed by Wisconsinites on food stamps. My other losers are members of the Milwaukee County Board who want to spend $68 grand of taxpayer money to subsidize a vegetable cart to deliver produce to Milwaukee residents. Geez, there seems to be a bipartisan trend of government dictating what people eat. My winners, the majority of voters who agree that feel-good food nannyism by both parties is bad news.
Michelle Litjens.
My winner is the Baltimore mother, Toya Graham, who saw her son with a brick causing trouble and slapped him upside the head to come home. She's a double winner because her son said he is embarrassed by his actions, and his mom slapped him because she loved him and just wanted to keep him out of jail. My loser is St. Norbert's, a so-called Catholic college in De Pere who invited pro-abortion activist Gloria Steineman to discuss social justice with students. If they don't want to observe Catholic teachings, then maybe St. Norbert should just be called Norbert's College.
Lynne DeBruin.
Well, like Michelle, most of us have seen the video of the mom who clocked her son for participating in the Baltimore riots. This outraged mom shares my Winner of the Week title with the 1,000 volunteers who cleaned up their city the next day. My loser is Ted Cruz, who told the media after the riots that President Obama had inflamed racial tension since becoming president. But when Cruz was asked what specifically had the president done, he couldn't list one specific thing that Obama did or didn't do. Cruz also had no answer when asked what actions he himself would do to reduce racial tensions if he were president.
Collin Roth.
My winners this week are Steve Noss, Rob Hutton, Dewey Strobel, and others who are forcing a debate on prevailing wage. Thank you. My loser is Senator Tammy Baldwin, who voted against an amendment to make the Iran nuclear deal subject to constitutional treaty requirements. It appears Baldwin's previous criticism of executive overreach in the imperial presidency were really just a partisan cudgel to use against the Bush administration.
Well, my winner, the Wisconsin State Supreme Court, and its new Chief Justice, Pat Roggensack. This is what democracy looks like. My loser, Milwaukee District Attorney John Chisholm, who exposed himself last week when he suggested that Scott Walker be charged with criminal defamation because he criticized the John Doe. To a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and to John Chisholm, free speech looks like a crime. Scary, but revealing. Thanks for joining us and joining me for my radio show Monday morning on News Radio 620 WTMJ from 8:30 until noon. Have a great week.